Welcome into a special Inside Carolina Roundtable. I am Tommy Ashley. That's Greg Barnes. That's Doc Staples. That is Buck Sanders. We are sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, as always. And this is the first special roundtable talking about Carolina football heading into the Bill Belichick era. But as Buck Sanders can proudly say, this is also the first show we've done on the On3 network. Inside Carolina officially a part of On3. And folks, the move has been arduous and tiresome, but very beneficial. Buck, I'll let you say a couple things before we get rolling, and then I want to let folks know what they need to do if they're new to this show, new to this On3 network, to get you up to speed with Inside Carolina. But Buck, it's been a wild, crazy ride the past 25, 30 years with Inside Carolina. This is just one of the next steps, new era of the whole deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first thing I would say is that if you're watching this and you still don't know where Inside Carolina is, then you need to head on over to On3 and sign up for, yes, you need to go there and sign up for Inside Carolina on On3. This was a long and Tommy mentioned arduous process. That we've been thinking about for a long time, and we think about it every year, really. And we have in the past. Do we stay with the network that we're with, or do we look around? What are the possibilities? Contracts enter into it, money enters into it, everything enters into it, and just the huge amount of work that is entailed in moving from one network to another is astronomical. So this is not something that we undertook lightly. It wasn't something that we didn't think out all the way through. We're not going to get everything perfect with this move, but at the same time, we feel really good about the facing that you're looking at if you're watching on YouTube. Here, everybody with IC that works for IC at 24/7 is working for IC at On3, and we're honored that the guys had choices about what they wanted to do with their livelihoods after we moved to On3, and all of them decided that they would stick with Inside Carolina, which warms the cockles of my heart. So. And maybe I don't know if that was on Jason's bingo card or not, the cockles of my heart piece. But
I
anyway,
do not have cockles in the podcast bingo card. No.
we're glad you're here. There are more details that are going to unfold. We can finally talk about it. Contractually, we could not speak about the move. It was torture to us because we like to be as transparent as we possibly can be. In this particular case, we could not be transparent at all. We had to keep our little mouths shut until everything was done. And if you know me, you know how hard that was for me to do. So there's still lots to come in terms of IC on On3, and we're really looking forward to it. We're very excited about the move, and looking forward to seeing it evolve further down the road.
Absolutely. Buck Sanders has seen this Inside Carolina journey for, like I said, 25 years, a little longer for me and a little longer for Inside Carolina on the whole, but it's always the same product, the same staff. Want to make sure folks understand you need to go to On3 and sign up for a new account. If you haven't already done that, it does not transfer from the old platform. So you need to sign up for a new account, get it done, create your username or whatever you want. Hopefully you can get your old one. If you can't, do something fancy so we'll know who you are. Also, customer service. If you have issues with signing up or subscriptions or whatever, you can go to support@on3.com. There's a ton of stuff. And one thing about On3 that Inside Carolina has never officially had is an app. It'll be an app specifically for Inside Carolina. It'll cover these podcasts, the YouTubes, all the content from everybody. everybody has an app. There's an app for everything. Lord knows I've figured that out dealing with apartments for college students and all that. They have apps to do everything at apartments. You don't just go to the office anymore. You get on the app. So you can get on the On3 Inside Carolina app. We'll hit the ground running. There'll be hiccups. I'm sure some folks will be upset, but one thing about it, Buck, Ben, Michelle, and the entire Inside Carolina crew always make it right for Inside Carolina subscribers. Johnny T-shirt's going to be here, so you can get that discount still on the premium message boards. There's the message boards are vibrant and alive, and we're going to do what we always do, and we're going to talk ball. Carolina opens fall camp on Saturday, the 2nd. Bill Belichick's got some availability. They'll have player availability, and hey, we get to watch a minute or two of practice, hopefully longer than that. So that'll be interesting. Buck and I will be in Chapel Hill for sure. But Greg, I want to come to you first to get this ball rolling as we transition off the move from Inside Carolina and into the new era of North Carolina football. We talked about it on our stand-up outside of the Charlotte Hilton. It was absolutely crazy in Charlotte last Thursday. Absolutely insane. And now the show moves to Chapel Hill and only Chapel Hill. Greg, can you put it into words what it's going to be like when this camp opens on Saturday, getting up to the TCU game on September 1st?
There is so much interest in Bill Belichick and North Carolina in the football world. And we're not just talking about the ACC footprint. We're not just talking about national college football. We're talking about NFL and beyond. People want to know, can this grand experiment that Carolina decided 9 months ago to embark on can work? And because of that, when practice begins on Saturday morning, it's not going to be your normal, there's probably 15 people here. And guess what? All 3 of the local TV crews are here. Like that used to be a big deal. It's going to be a media circus, and it will be throughout the course of the season, good or bad. And North Carolina, I think the powers that be understood what the potential was with Bill Belichick when you bring in a guy who's won 8 Super Bowls, 6 as a head coach. But I think the media attention of the last 7 or 8 months has far exceeded what anybody thought would be possible. And that is going to be a harsh glare on the football program. Belichick, of course, is used to it. It's old hat to him. This is new for UNC. This is new for the fan base. And it'll just be fascinating to watch, as we all understand and have watched this program over the years and have reported on it and covered it and have seen all the ebbs and flows. But to see that type of spotlight on this program is just going to be incredible. And I think everybody is hoping that there's at least some level of success, because if this goes really well, there's going to be a lot of attention. And if it goes really poor, there's going to be probably even more attention. And that kind of sets the table of just the amount of pressure and stress and hype on the football program. One thing we talked about in Charlotte, Tommy, and I think it's relevant, is all that spotlight is on Bill Belichick. It wasn't on the other 4 kids who came to Charlotte with Bill. They had a few people at their tables asking about Bill, but all the attention was on Belichick. And I think that's very beneficial for these young men, because Belichick's taking the spotlight and they can just go about their business and not worry about criticism coming their way. And that's a critical thing for the next 4 or 5 weeks before you get to that TCU game.
Buck, your thoughts here. Greg mentioned the hype, and we haven't really talked since the season ended last year, and Lord knows a lot has changed since then. But Buck, your thoughts on the hype since December the 11th, but also the hype in general. This North Carolina program, I don't think has seen it. Maybe Butch Davis's time here kind of matched it. Maybe 97 kind of matched it. But Buck, you've been around a long time, as have I. Have you ever seen anything like this? And the anticipation, not just from the fans, but from us. This is going to be interesting to cover. Buck, your thoughts?
I think probably the primary difference in the hype that we're seeing with Bill Belichick and the University of North Carolina football program is that the hype really, like 2010, there was some comparison to 2010. Well, that's not true. The 2010 team got hyped up because of the talent they had coming back to that football team. They were loaded. They had everything they needed for a solid run that year. How well they could have stacked up nationally that year had everything not fallen apart is a question that we'll never be able to answer. But it was a team generated hype that in 2010, 1997, that team was loaded with defensive talent in particular. The team generated the hype that was around UNC football. This hype is totally about Bill Belichick. There are so few known quantities on this UNC football team that most of the experts and other people that pick the conference, they've got North Carolina mid-tier at best, and maybe in the bottom half of the ACC for the year, because there are so few known quantities on this team, soup to nuts. I mean, you got some offensive linemen returning, but that unit is going to be completely rebuilt in a lot of ways. Defensively, the defensive backfield should be good, but they lost Elijah Huzzy. They have some pieces. Wide receivers are sort of an unknown for the most part. You've got a quarterback coming in that people know something about, and thanks to Jason Staples, we know much more about. If you haven't read his staff breakdowns, player personnel breakdowns, you need to get around to that before the season starts. But the hype that North Carolina is experiencing right now has a face, and that face belongs to Bill Belichick. And until we know more down the road about how it's going to work out for him in terms of does the college game suit him? Does he feel comfortable in the college game? Is he able to relate to players? Is he able to motivate players? Is he able to do all those things you expect a head coach to do at the college level? Until we know more about all of that, the word hype doesn't really have an application to this 2025 team. It has more of an application to the presence of a 8-time Super Bowl champion coming to lead a college program, and all that's unprecedented. It's different, fellas. This is going to be different, and we just need to get used to that.
Absolutely nailed it, as always. Jason, Buck referenced all your scouting reports. Greg mentioned it last week in Charlotte, and Buck echoed it there. All those teams had talent. This team's not anywhere close to that as far as what's on the roster, but you've had an opportunity to scout it. So I'll let you weigh in on the hype / expectation versus what's really there, the meat on the bone there. And of course, we'll find out a lot more, or maybe not, starting on Saturday as Carolina progresses to the TCU game. But your thoughts there on whether this program is at a place to, I don't want to say match the hype, but at least live up to some of the expectation, regardless of the coach, but also regarding the coach and his expectations, Jason.
I think it really depends on what the expectations are. I mean, this is not a national championship roster. It's almost certainly not an ACC championship roster. But does anybody out there actually expect Bill Belichick to go out there and win an ACC championship in year one? I mean, is that what we're expecting? Is anybody expecting that? I think anybody who's expecting that is probably, they're probably just not realistic. You're probably looking at Homer fans and things that says, oh, now we got, the NFL GOAT. Now we're going to go out and win 11 games or, 12-0, any of these number of things. Right. But if we're talking about, is the talent on the roster to, potentially be more competitive and maybe win 8 games this year, if they stay healthy, against the schedule that they've got, that's viable. I mean, they could win more than that if they stay healthy. And if the right guys happen to blossom at the right time, they've got some talent on this roster. It's just that the highest ceiling talent is really unproven and young. And the older guys are mostly guys that are still in college because they're not really NFL players. So that's kind of where you are. Now, again, if everything sort of breaks right and the development happens really well and the quarterback situation works out, sort of maxes out and Gio Lopez turns out to really have a breakout year in the ACC and looks super comfortable in the offense that they're running, then it's possible that we could see a year that lives up to at least some of the expectations or hype that we're looking at. And what I mean by that is, you go out and you win your first game against TCU, and then what's the next game where you really feel like that team is going to be playing a team that it's not more talented than? This team could easily start 4-0 after a win against TCU. And then you talk about the hype, right? And then all of a sudden, you're probably looking at hype that more than equals what Colorado had in the first year under Deion. Now, we all know what happened to Colorado after that initial start, which sort of coincidentally started also again in an opener against TCU, right? TCU is kind of the common thread here. But, in as much as the opening to the season does give a gettable but good name opponent in week 1, and then 3 games where you should be the favorite, there's a chance to open up and at least build more hype before you get to the stage of the season where it's going to get a whole lot harder. I don't think that they have the depth and the quality of proven talent at this point to be, top 3, top 4 team in the ACC. But I don't think the ACC is especially deep or especially good this year. So, I do think there is more opportunity than in many years to go out and get a few extra wins. A couple extra wins, I should say.
Talking with Greg Barnes, Jason Staples, and Buck Sanders here on Inside Carolina special preview of fall camp or training camp in Chapel Hill starts Saturday, August 2nd. If you're watching this after Saturday, go back and check out all the Inside Carolina content from that day on the On3 network, as Inside Carolina has now paired with On3. Greg, your thoughts there? I agree with all this. The hype is all about Belichick and all this. We've talked about the players and the talent level. So I may be jumping the gun a little bit, and we, of course, will do a prediction show, and somebody referenced 12-0. Not there yet. But Greg, what's realistic? First of all, what's realistic for North Carolina fans to expect over the next month getting ready? I don't think we'll hear much about what's going on, but what's realistic once this season starts outside of wins and losses, do you think? Is that a fair question?
It is. And I want to add a little bit of a color here. Bill Connolly is
I'm the guy adding color in this show. I'm just going to say.
Bill Connolly is the guy who created SP Plus. And as everyone knows, I'm big into the metrics. And so I was fascinated to see, he does his previews every year. What does Bill Connolly, what do the numbers say? And back in the spring, when he first took a stab at it, his quote was, "I have no idea how to set expectations for this." And then he revisited it a few weeks ago, and he said, quote, "I still have no idea how it's going to go." And I think that's all of us. We have no idea how this is going to turn out. I think Jason's done as good of a job as anybody in trying to lay out the pieces available for the coaching staff. But beyond that, who knows? And the way that I've looked at it is, in theory, Bill Belichick, everybody knows him as a very astute student of the game who understands the nuance and how to scheme appropriately. He's done it so well for so very long. And in theory, coming to the college game, it should be like going from playing chess to playing checkers to some extent. And because of that, he will not be outcoached. I don't know that the gap is as wide as that may suggest, but I do think we're going to see a team as well coached as we've probably seen. I mean, maybe in my lifetime. I mean, it's been a long time that there's been a tactician at the head coach position for North Carolina. That's different.
And I want to jump in and add something here.
Okay.
It's not just about being a tactician. Because I think in terms of tactics, a lot of the edges, a lot of the advantages there might be overblown. The biggest thing that you're getting with Belichick isn't even the tactics. It is the thorough, obsessive, almost to the point of insanity, attention to detail when it comes to basic fundamentals and the sorts of things that he believes make a team good. And so even if nothing changes in terms of the tactics or the strategy that's imposed in terms of what scheme you're running or what play you call, the reason you hire Bill Belichick is to get his eyes and his cultural shift within the program to get the level of attention to detail on those little things that change the way that you execute those things. And how many times, Greg, have we emphasized and beaten the drum over the past 15 years, 10 years, or whatever it is, that, look, you can have the right play call all you want, but it's not about the call. It's about how you execute the call. It's not, the old coaching saying is, it's not what you know, it's what it's what you can get them to do. And that's really what this is about as well. So to emphasize what you're saying and take it one step further, that's really where I think if you're going to see the biggest coaching edge, especially in year one, it's probably right there.
So let me chime in, Greg, and I hate to step on you. I want Buck's opinion too after you finish. What does it mean? I know what it means in theory, but what does that mean in practice, Greg? They're not going to be outcoached. We've seen some boneheaded plays from Carolina football, from any football team over the course of the years. You would think they weren't coached to do that. To Jason's point, is to get them to do what you coach them. But what does it mean when you say they're not going to be outcoached? For the layperson to look at that, I mean, they're not going to kneel on fourth down, in the season opener. Things like that.
They definitely won't do what Miami of Florida did, where they're going to run the football and up the middle multiple times and give themselves the chance to fumble and lose a game against Georgia Tech. They ain't going to do that stuff.
Right, but those things are like realistically that you shouldn't do that in midget league football or little person football or whatever it's called now. Pee Wee League.
Don't demean Mario Cristobal that way. He's a large man.
He is, but he lives a long ways from here. But Greg,
I mean, Les Miles did that quite a bit. We saw it with Max some. We've seen it with Larry Fedora, right, where they kicked off to start both halves. So you see these kind of things, and at the NFL level, that stuff is not. You can't do it. You don't have a job if you do that kind of thing. But beyond that, and Jason's talked about this plenty of times in the past, but it's getting the proper depth on your routes. It's making sure you're dropping your hips the way you need to if you're a cornerback. It's all the very small things like your foot placement if you're an offensive lineman. It's the technique and how you tackle. All these little things are what matters.
How tightly you like where. One of the things that I look for in terms of watching how detail oriented a coaching staff is, I want to watch how their players carry the football. That matters because that's going to impact how many turnovers you're going to have. When you start seeing guys getting the ball out there away from their body and that's tolerated, that's telling me that staff lets other stuff slide too. When you see guys when you see a whole team where everybody carries the rock basically the same way, that tells you that day in, day out, they're emphasizing that and they're not going to fumble the rock so many times. That's another thing, right? Turnovers are random, but not completely random. You can impact whether or not you're likely to fumble based on how you carry it.
And anecdotally, I've got something from someone who was part of the search committee who sat in on the first Zoom call with Bill Belichick. And he went through this whole list of kind of what he envisioned for the program and these types of things. But one of the things that stood out is he was talking about the importance of kind of getting to know players. And he talked about how at New England, they would sometimes draft a kid and a kid would be from Mississippi. What does it do in New England that it doesn't do in Mississippi? It snows. And if you just bring a kid in and say, hey, as a football player, we're going to work with him to teach him all these different things, and he doesn't know some of the unique changes in his world around him beyond football, it could pose a challenge and add adversity. So they would take some of these kids who are from the South and tell them, hey, this is the kind of shovel that you need. You don't need the pointy kind. You need the flat edge kind to make sure you can get a better scoop. This is how you do it. They would go to that extent in New England with rookies that came in and other players to help them better their life with very small details so that it was less stress for them and therefore it helped them focus more in football. Those are extreme examples of detail, but that's why Bill Belichick is what he is. And then the other aspect with the technical part of things, the detail that Jason highlighted, is also strength and conditioning. And this is, we hear every time a coaching staff comes in, every time a strength and conditioning coach comes in, oh, yeah, it's better than it's ever been, right? But everything that we've heard is that this is different. It's just another level up. Belichick was, and his staff, we were told, was like shocked that Carolina was not tackling even really in spring ball because they were worried about injuries. I can assure you they're tackling. And so when you combine those three things, that sets the stage for, regardless of what talent you have, you're going to be scrappy, you're going to be smart, and you're going to play hard. Smart, tough, and physical. Isn't that what Fedora used to say?
You lift fast.
Look, it's a good way of going about things in football.
For sure.
I got my drink already. I didn't miss anything.
Right. So you've got this setup, this apparatus in place. Now what you need, to Jason's point earlier, you got to have the talent in place. And that's going to take a little bit of time. But the infrastructure, while it's probably not there yet, it's moving in the right direction. And seeing that, you'll be able to see that on the field, to answer your question, Tommy, from however long ago you asked. You're going to be able to see some of those details shine through, even if the result on the scoreboard is a loss.
And to that point, Greg, I mentioned this on an earlier podcast, but probably won't get quite the number of views and listens as this one based on timing. One of the things that I heard from one of the staffers in the football program who's been around a long time was, look, if we win 5 games this year, but we win it playing tough, hard-nosed, smart football, I'm totally fine with that because that's changing who we are. And that's kind of the mentality that you have to bring into this year is that aspect. And to your point about strength and conditioning, and I've got a little piece coming out, should be either the same day that this releases, or maybe tomorrow, talking about some of the coaching stuff that we can look at. One of the things that I think has happened to a lot of programs in college football, and it's not just college, but football in general, in terms of strength and conditioning, is there's been a real transition since my day when in the way that strength and conditioning is done and executed across various programs. And the transition has basically been to get more scientific about strength and conditioning. So essentially, and this goes all the way back. I mean, I saw some of that transition actually when we went from Dave Van Hallinger, who went to Georgia with Mark Richt, to John Jost, who took over after him, and they brought him in from Nebraska. There was a shift in how we did strength and conditioning that year when we went from one to the other. And so I got a little bit of a taste of that difference at that time. But the shift basically is to look at essentially the nature of the physical requirements of the sport of football and how to get bigger, faster, stronger for those specific things. To say, look, strength and conditioning is about getting guys to be the best physical football players that they can be. And so that means working this exercise along these lines with this much weight, not too much here, running these sprints instead of that kind of exercise because it matches and mirrors more what you're doing on the field day to day. And you want to, match your energy systems and do all of this scientifically so that you are constructing the perfect body for football. And there's injury prevention stuff and all of that. And there's some of that is positive. And I do think in general, a lot of times you get stronger, faster athletes if you do that right. But I actually think the pendulum has swung in many cases too far in that direction, in the scientific direction of like, look, we're paying attention to the GPS numbers here, and we want these guys to be at this effort level, and we want to make sure that we get their heart rate to this point so that they can give max effort the next time, and they're going to keep getting faster. And so, yes, you might actually get a guy that is a couple hundredths of a second faster, or then doing it the old school way, which it was, back in my day, the mat drills stuff that we did, we weren't allowed to have water for the 70 minutes of mat drills, despite the fact of what people actually said. Water was not available to us. It was available if you quit. And then, there were other problems at that point. But it was about essentially building a team through going through really, really difficult stuff together that was going to take you to your limit, and then take you past what you thought your limit was, and then take you past what you realize your limit actually is, and then hopefully you get to the other side and you go, oh my gosh, I can go so much further than I thought, and we all did this together. And you're trying to hold your brothers up who are about to, pass out and all this other stuff. There's something about that in terms of the way that it builds the heart of a team, and it builds the way that a team actually functions in terms of the drive and the way that team goes about business. I'll take that team that's gone through some measure of that over the team that's just slightly bigger, faster, and stronger. That's another aspect of the coaching thing that I think is important. And that's something we heard about this summer. I'm really interested to see what difference that makes.
Talking with the crew on Inside Carolina, Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com, sponsor of the show. Go get your 10% off your order. Still out there. Tar Pit premium message boards, UNC basketball premium message boards. Get your 10% Johnny T-shirt, and go to On3 if you have not already, and sign up for your Inside Carolina subscription and your username. Buck Sanders, you sat patiently for a while, so I'm gonna ask you the same
the egg
question.
timer didn't come out.
I know. I was waiting. I was. It must still be in the move. It hadn't come out yet. He's got it. Oh, he's flipped that thing like a them little paper footballs over and over since we've been talking about. Buck, what does it look like? What does this look like success wise when camp starts on Saturday, and then as we roll into the season for you to be sitting here, say, anytime saying this is what I expected. This is what I was hoping to see from this North Carolina team. What's that look like?
I think probably a lot of what I think about Bill Belichick leading this program and what he brings to the table and how that's going to change things has to do with where Bill Belichick formed his emphasis as a coach very early on. He in all the literature that is about Bill Belichick, when there's a ton of it, the one thing that you learn first and foremost is that his dad was a scout, and by the time he was, in the first or second grade, he was helping his father grade players, scouting players, and that plays also into Jason's comment about attention to detail, but that's where he comes from. That's where he lives, is evaluating football players. Are they doing the right thing on a detailed level? Is their footwork good? Is their handwork good? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? And his father scouted other teams to try to find players who had a weakness that they could exploit on game day. That was his job, was to find players on the other team that were not living up to the highest standards that he would expect. How can we exploit that weakness? And that's where Belichick comes from. That's where he lives, is how can I identify weaknesses in the other team that I can exploit? And how can I identify weaknesses in my own team that I can correct so that they will be better on game day? And that's where he comes from, and that's where he lives. If I see that, and I think we will see that emphasis and that drive to scout players on both sides, or his team and on the opponent's team, and how to make use of the individual idiosyncrasies of each player, their strengths and their weaknesses, and he parlays that out into a team approach. This is how we beat the Raiders, or this is how we beat the Rams. We do it in a certain particular way. We're going to use 6 defensive backs against the Rams instead of 4. We're going to use 2 tight ends instead of 1. These are the ways we can exploit our strength and their weakness, and everything else is secondary to that, or is complementary to that, I guess is a better way to say it. We're going to do things we do on Saturday because they give us the best chance to win. And I think we'll see more of that. It's going to be subjective. I'm with the guy that said that if they only won 5 games and they saw certain characteristics of the team, that they would be okay with that. And I feel the same way in a lot of respects. But it's being able to see different approaches designed specifically for different opponents to beat that particular opponent. That to me is going to be what I'm going to be focused on watching on Saturdays for 2025.
That's an interesting question, interesting point. And I think Butch Davis went 4-8 his first year, and they lost like 4 or 5 one-score games, and they played tough or whatever. If that happens, this is a different era, and we've talked about 6-6 here. But Greg,
Butch was also never really known as a great in-game tactician or detail-oriented coach when it came to a practice or in-game coach, right? In a lot of ways, he and Belichick are polar opposites. What Butch was so good at, and one of the reasons he didn't work out so well in the NFL, is he was really, really good at scouting and talent acquisition, and he built an absolute monster down in Miami, right? Miami of
Probably
Florida.
The most talented football team to ever hit the field.
It's one of them. I think there have been a couple others since then that probably give them a run, but certainly in first breath discussion, and that was partly because Butch was an unbelievable assessor of talent and a great recruiter, and so he was able to collect talent. And the 2010 North Carolina team was an insanely talented team. I still maintain that team might win a national title if you don't have a certain tweet go out. So, but the thing is, it might not have won a national title because Butch actually didn't help his teams as much in some of those in-game things, which is exactly where you expect Belichick in those single score games and some of those games on the margin. That's where you expect Belichick to actually give you a little bit of an edge. That maybe you instead of going 4-8 with 4 one-score losses, maybe you wind up going 8-4 with 4 one-score wins, something like that. And that's the difference with the in-game decisions that you can get. So I am really curious to see how that works out.
Greg, how realistic is it to think that they can adjust game plans so significantly week to week in college? It's not like pros where it's a job, you're there all the time. I understand it's this 20-hour-a-week limit is sort of BS, but how realistic is it that you can take all those professional ways of doing things and bring it to the college level? I get the details and I get all that kind of stuff, but how much can you actually do with college age guys, young players that aren't as developed, but also time constraints when it comes to the college game? I feel like some of the pro success may be a little bit overblown on the college level, which I think we mentioned earlier in the show. But Greg, your thought there?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be an issue whatsoever for the coaching staff. And I think really I don't think the age is going to be that big of an issue. I mean, there's always an issue with freshmen coming in having to learn any system. But I think after your freshman year, you're pretty well attuned to what you're being asked to do. I think the challenge is going to be, and this is where Steve plays a big role, and some of the other guys with college experience, is taking whatever the coaching staff comes up with, maybe from an NFL mindset, an NFL approach, which is expansive, and condensing it to such a degree that it works for the players. I'm not sure exactly how they're going to handle their practices, but pretty standard is you have several days of practice and then you have a polish day. Are they going to do the same thing? Which I imagine they probably will. So how do you do that? How do you make sure you have enough wrinkles and unique touches in place that the kids can pick up on without it being too much, or maybe with it not being enough? And I think that's just where there's going to be some trial and error involved. That's why I think this year specifically, it kind of goes to Buck's point, is there will be trial and error because it is Belichick's first year in college. So how does he adapt? How does he, when the team maybe loses 3 games in a row, how does his persona with the team change compared to what it maybe would have in the pros? All of these little things add up. And I think that's where the learning curve really is this year, and why if there's not adequate adjustment as the year goes along, it can really go south quickly. I don't think that's going to happen, but the potential is there because there's so many new things that are trying to be worked in.
Jason, I thought you were going to jump in there. You look like you were ready to.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that Greg mentioned is, you know, how can you with college students, with college players, make sure that you're doing some of this extra stuff without overloading them. There are a couple things. One is that the best coaching staffs teach a lot through a same as model. So you can teach 10 different things and essentially lump them all together under, okay, look, this is what we're doing, but for you, this is same as this. It's just same as for you. And so what changed, you know, the whole structure overall changes, but for you over here, it's the same. So when you hear this is what you think, and here's how this is going to work. So some of that, you do some same as stuff. But the other thing that I think Belichick was really, really good at, and Buck mentioned this before, a little bit earlier, one of the things he was really, really good at in the NFL was using his personnel in specific ways so that, you know what, maybe that guy doesn't need to know everything that we're doing in this case, because that guy has essentially 3 jobs this week. He's only going to be on the field when we need these things, and that's what we're going to work with him on. And for other stuff, we're going to have this guy over here. And, you know, maybe this week we're going to be a 3-down team because we're playing against a team that has had trouble blocking odd fronts. And so we're going to go 3 down. We're going to put our 3 best backers on the field, and we're going to go that way. And we're going to present something that's completely different. But guess what? It's the same calls. Your defense doesn't actually have to do or learn anything all that different. That's already part of what you do. But it is a whole lot different for what the offense is seeing. So that's the stuff that I would expect is, all right, guys, this week we're going to be a mostly 6 DB team. This is the way it's going to work. We're going to go 3 down and 2 backers and 6 DBs this week, just because. Or this week we're going to go odd mostly because this is who we're. So I think there will be a little bit of that in terms of opponent by opponent alterations, where it doesn't actually change much from the player side in terms of what you have to know, but it does change the preparation for your opponent. So I do think we'll see some of that this year. And that's a way to kind of help mitigate the difference in terms of overloading your players.
That's why it's inside Carolina. That's why it's the best in the business. Same as. I mean, just explained it away. You know, my concerns, Jason just explained them away. But I'm going to give you the final word here. We're on the eve of camp, and we're on day 1 of Inside Carolina's new era with On 3. You get the final word here before we get out of here.
I think the one thing that I would add to the question that you posed, Tommy, about college and being prepared to implement a specific game plan each and every week against a different opponent, and how much could be different than in an NFL. I think Belichick is coming to college football at exactly the right time for him. This is not college football in the Fedora era, where you've got people that are, on the football field, graduate assistants and whatnot, that are supposed to be aiding the players on the field to learn certain things, and is absolutely verboten that they can actually coach that player on the field. And now you're in a situation where you can have people that can act as consultants, and you take away certain parts of what was on the former coach's plate. Recruiting was just dominated coach's time once upon a time. They spent a lot of time recruiting. Well, that's pretty much off their plate these days. they can spend more time on coaching ball than they used to. And so there's more of an opportunity, I think, for Belichick at this particular point in history to be able to modify game plans, be able to be specific about what he wants, because there's so many resources available to Belichick that were never available under previous regimes. Starting with Lombardi, and he's got a whole staff that does nothing but think about recruiting and personnel and all of that, which takes it off of the day-to-day agenda for the guy coaching footwork for an offensive lineman. He doesn't have to think about, I got to make a phone call, in 10 minutes to such and such. So I think it's a good time for Belichick to come into the college game. I think he's got more resources than other coaches that came from the professional ranks had when they entered into the college game. So I'm looking forward to just seeing how it all plays out. As we said before, and the whole theme of the show could be, this is going to be different, gentlemen. It's going to be different. And part of what we do at Inside Carolina, part of what our job is going to be, is to figure out what those differences are as we go week to week, game to game, and point those out where we can. So really looking forward to it. It's an exciting time in many ways. The whole realignment possibilities and all those things. It's a very exciting time to be following college football. And we're following now at On 3, which that's all they do is college sports. That's what their concentration is, and that's where Inside Carolina is.
Yep. It is time for college football. North Carolina's camp opens Saturday, August 2nd. Inside Carolina will be there in full array. Buck, me, Adam, Jeremiah, Spencer, Cade, all the crowd will be there. Jim Hawkins taking pictures, everybody behind the scenes working on it to give you the content you're used to at Inside Carolina. It's just a different house. It's the same people, the same content. All you got to do is show up at www.insidecarolina.com and get all you need. Sign up for your new username to get on the premium message boards. They got a $3 or $1 for 3-month deal going on, and the app is coming, and that'll certainly help this process. That's Greg Barnes. That's Jason Staples. That, of course, is Buck Sanders. I'm Tommy Ashley. As always, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt. We will see you around. Stay tuned for all the coverage of a new era for Inside Carolina and a new era for North Carolina football.